And welcome back to the Luke Deckard Show. I'm your host, Luke Deckard, and with me tonight, I have three guests as we are going to discuss Rian Johnson's new film, Glass Onion, and generally have a conversation about the Knives Out franchise. I thought it would be appropriate to bring on some crime writers to discuss Knives Out. All of us have a love of Golden Age fiction, Golden Age crime fiction, the Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff, and Glass Onion is very much rooted in that kind of stuff. So I thought, let's bring these guys on and have a discussion. But let's have you introduce yourselves. So I have James Benmore, Vaseem Khan, and Matthew Booth. James, we'll start with you. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your books and your writing.
Great. So yeah, I'm a novelist. I've written 4 novels. The first 3 are crime historical novels about the Artful Dodger from Oliver Twist. They're published by Quercus, and they have kind of mystery plots a little bit. The book I've written more recently is more squarely this genre, the kind of detective novel. It's called Ask for Mercy. It's a private eye novel set in London, and it's coming out hopefully in the spring. So I'm going to be self-publishing it. So keep an eye out for that. Also, like Luke, I work for Noiser podcast software. I write scripts, history podcasts, and lately I've been writing a lot of true crime. So that's in a similar vein to what we're talking about. I wrote for a show called Scotland Yard Confidential, and I'm currently working on a show that in development about real life detectives. So yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Vaseem.
My name is Vaseem Khan. I write a series called the Malabar House novel set in 1950s India. First in that series, Midnight at Malabar House, won the Crime Writers Association Historical Dagger, was shortlisted for the Theakston's Old Peculiar Crime Novel of the Year. More importantly, I've spent the last 16 years with a bit of a job at UCL, University College London Security and Crime Science Department. So I'm surrounded by people who work on forensic science, and we work with a lot of cops. So I know how investigations are carried out. And my approach to this session, if I might be permitted to do my Benoit Blanc impression, yes, using his own words from Knives Out. My presence here will be purely ornamental. You will find me a respectful, quiet, passive observer of the truth.
Amazing.
Was that as hammy as Daniel Craig?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. to be discussed.
Yeah. Yes, it will be. Matthew.
I won't do any Benoit Blanc impressions for everybody's benefit. My name is Matthew Booth. I'm the author of the Everett Carr Mysteries, published by Level Best Book. The first one being called Talent for Murder, which is out now, and the second one is out later this month, called The Dangers of This Night, and there'll be a third one next year. I've also written several Sherlock Holmes books, non-fiction and fiction. Lifelong Sherlock Holmes enthusiast. I'm a member of the Crime Writers Association, and I'm the current editor of the monthly magazine Red Herrings.
Indeed. Great. So yeah, this is tonight's panel. We have. I'll be taking comments that'll come through in the chat sporadically, but we do have one already from a regular listener, Biffer the Hobbit, which is a great name. Who already says Glass Onion made no sense. The movie had too many plot holes, and it was made for me. And it was funny and a good time. So,
all right.
What do you do with that? It's all over the place there, Biff. So yeah. So what's the best way to discuss this? Let's maybe ease in with a little bit of Knives Out discussion, right? I know, Matthew, you watched Knives Out prior to this show. Did anyone else rewatch Knives Out before watching Glass Onion?
No, I'd seen it a couple of times, so I felt that I knew it fairly well.
Same.
Yeah, I've seen it 4 times, I think now, and I did rewatch it before watching Glass Onion. I'm a huge film buff, so I'm still a bit old fashioned. I like to go to the cinema, and I watch Glass Onion in the cinema too. And I'll watch anything. I even watched Avatar 2, and that's 4 hours of my life I won't get back. I think
you went and saw Avatar too.
That's real addiction to cinema, like to cinema. Rather you than me.
Yeah, I think I can understand what that comment from Biffa means, but not about Glass Onion, but about Knives Out. There are clearly plot holes even in Knives Out, in spite of its tremendous success. But I normally classify movies into two types. One where you go away and you've got a good feeling. You know, you think your money's been well spent, and the other one where you just want to go back and burn the cinema down. So Glass Onion was burn the cinema down. Knives Out was money well spent.
Wow. Interesting.
Wow,
but there are definite plot holes which we can get to.
Yes. Matthew, what was your take when your kind of initial reaction to seeing Knives Out?
Well, as I said, I'm a massive Golden Age fan, and for my money, up until Knives Out, there'd been very few genuine whodunit Golden Age type films out. You know, you have to go right back to sort of the Peter Ustinov days of Evil Under the Sun and stuff like that to get the sort of film that I wanted to see. So I was pleasantly surprised, but I think the first time I watched it, I was bowled over by it. But I think a lot of that is rose-tinted spectacles. Because like quite a lot of Golden Age stuff, the more times you watch it or the more times you read it, the more you realise that it doesn't really make a great deal of sense. It doesn't stack up. Very few Golden Age. The best Golden Ages always do. You can see where the clues are. The clues still make sense.
Yes.
You kick yourselves all the time for not seeing them. But with Knives Out, there was a bit of that on the second viewing. And then on the third viewing, you think, well, no, hang on. And then on the fourth viewing, you think, well, this is ludicrous. You know?
Yes.
So it may not be a film that demands multiple viewings, but the first time I saw it, I'll hold my hand up and say I thought it was great. Yeah,
I saw Knives Out at like I was lucky enough to go to like a pre-screening because the PR people behind it, I don't know if you remember this, Matthew, but they emailed the CWA saying, oh, we have some tickets and we want Crime Writer people to go and see it. And they had like a handful of people in London had tickets for a London showing in where was it? White City. And so I was able to go see it that way. So I didn't have to pay to see it, which was nice. Like that made me quite happy. But it put me I was in a very different frame of mind seeing it as like a preview because there was so much hype being built up around it already, just at like preview stage. And I watched it. I think the first Knives Out, I don't really, I think the cast is good. I think it looks really nice, but Daniel Craig's accent is ridiculous, which obviously they make a joke of during the film, but it's kind of an easy joke. And I think there's just certain British actors who just stop doing American accents. Daniel Craig, Martin Freeman, and Benedict Cumberbatch all come to mind. They're not good at American accents. And that really stuck out to me. But Knives Out bothered me because it had, as you were saying, I noticed the plot holes on the first viewing, and that irked the bejesus out of me. The idea that Chris Evans' character goes and burns down the DNA testing place, and because the CCTV cameras are burnt, they say there's no footage. Like there's not film in those cameras. Like the film, the video footage would be elsewhere, stored on some server somewhere else.
There's only one camera.
Yeah,
the same applies to the video. The same applies to the video of her leaving the house. It's on a VCR tape, and she is taken along with the cops and allowed to somehow smuggle it away and do something to it. It's the most ludicrous police investigation you could possibly dream up. And I know we're supposed to go along with the fun aspect of it, but it's bollocks. I'm sorry. It's bollocks. It is. From start to finish.
And there's also the whole, when is it the housemaid or the nurse or whatever it is who gets strangled in the abandoned laundrette? And you think, why? She knows that he's the killer, so why is she meeting him in an
Yeah.
abandoned, darkened laundrette instead of a public place, or telling him to drop the money in a bin somewhere?
Yes.
You know, she's asking for what happens to her in the
And
most
why didn't he
ridiculous
kill her?
way.
Why didn't he actually just kill her properly? I mean, why did he have to do some kind of elaborate half strangulation, whatever?
Yes. Yeah.
So you can get a nice verbal clue on his name.
Well, she doesn't die. She doesn't die in the end, does she? So she can finger him.
Do you know what's funny? I haven't seen it for like a year or two. And listen to this, like I've forgotten all of this. I don't remember. And that's the thing about plots sometimes, is you don't always remember them. As you're saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was dumb. But my main memory is that didn't really bother me. And actually stuff like that doesn't bother me that much, if I'm honest. Yeah. I liked Knives Out a lot. I thought it was entertaining. Like I say, I watched it twice. Probably wouldn't watch it a third time, but I thought it was fine. My main sticking point with it, and this is about Rian Johnson up to now, is that he's really keen to be thought of as a funny director. He does a lot of jokes, and in Knives Out specifically, a lot of them landed flat for me. I think that a lot of them are kind of not that well scripted. Like they're kind of a little bit like that joke you were saying earlier, Luke, about making fun out of someone's accent when you're the one that's given him the accent is sort of, it's a bit forced. I guess that's, I found a lot of the humor a bit forced. A lot of it seemed too scripted, and that maybe some of the actors were kind of over egging it a little bit. Like, and but no, I didn't mind that. Like I say, it was just a thing on a second viewing that was kind of bugging me. It was kind of bumming me out a bit. Yeah. But when I saw the trailer for Glass Onion, I remember thinking, this is going to be more of the same. This is going to be more kind of like trying to be funny, and that's cool. Like he clearly wants to make a comedy, really, rather than a crime movie. And I kind of think, well, okay, you know, I'll take it as that. But if you're going to do that, be funny. And I guess I'll say what I thought of Glass Onion now, because one of the reasons that I much preferred Glass Onion to Knives Out is I think there's a lot of jokes in it. There are lots of jokes of different types. Like there's verbal humor, there's silly humor, there's background gags, there's visual jokes. Yeah. And for me, this time, they all landed. Like I was totally having absolute ball with it. Like I laughed consistently throughout. In fact, I'm jealous a little bit. I'd be interested to know what it was like. I would love to have seen this in the cinema. I'm kind of bummed out that I watched it on Netflix, because I like the idea of seeing, you know, a movie with like a pretty high gag rate with a big crowd. When you saw it, was the crowd laughing, or was it working as a comedy?
There were people who like Biffa there that liked the way that the humor went. You know, it wasn't for me, because I just thought the whole thing was stupid from beginning to end, and just got stupider on the second time when I did see it on Netflix. I mean, look, as crime writers, you know, we are going to be more critical. You know, we're going to be hypercritical, and we're going to look at plot holes. And you know, another simple one, which is commonly used, and I think Matthew can testify to this, where somebody dresses up as someone else and uses that as an alibi. And in Knives Out, we've got Ana de Armas, who pretending to be Harlan, and the fact that she's like a foot shorter than him and tiny and slim and skinny compared to Harlan doesn't faze anyone that she's mistaken for him and used, and that's the big alibi for her. It's just nonsense. So we are going to be also,
when she comes down the stairs disguised as Harlan, and I can't remember the character. Is it Walt? It's Michael. Walt. Yeah, Walt. And he's outside, and he just says, "Go back upstairs, Dad." But if he for a minute turned around and walked into the house and said, "Dad, what are you doing up?" the whole thing's blown apart.
Yeah,
it's very convenient.
It is. And if you're going to do something like that, which Christie does all the time, with these alibis that rely on people acting in a certain way, you've got to sell it better than that. And Vass is right. She's too short and slight to be Christopher Plummer at any time, you know. So
yes.
You've got to. If she was trying to be somebody who was of a similar build, I'd buy it more. But it just doesn't work as a clue. It doesn't.
An interesting
magic trick, as golden age detective fiction, it always seems to be. Well, very often it is. They're magic tricks, and if the trick doesn't work, the whole thing collapses.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is thinking about the last few Rian Johnson films, they all seem to have the same set of problems, whether that's The Last Jedi, Glass Onion, or Knives Out. They all sort of have structural problems, plot problems, excessive misfiring of comedy, to quote Red Letter Media. Just a lot of, obviously, James, you like the jokes.
Yeah, a lot of it worked for me. I was like laughing out loud.
I don't know if I just had like a massive stick up my ass or what, but I didn't laugh once.
Oh,
I found
wow.
the humor.
Oh,
I
wow.
literally, nothing made me laugh.
That's funny. That was my favorite thing about it, was that it was just funny all the way through. Like, there's loads of it that I was just laughing, and I watched it twice. I watched it last night in preparation for this.
Right.
And I like I say, it was different types of jokes. I won't run through them, but like even from the beginning, when that first little 10 minutes where they're all meeting, when they're all being sent the boxes and they're all like doing it, and there's all the banter between them, and that's all kind of funny.
Yes.
And there, there's the stereogram, and then they get inside, and there's the chess problem, and then they get inside, and there's the tic-tac-toe, and then there's the thing, and it's all very kind of puzzly and clever, and it's all sort of thing. And then it cuts to Janelle Monáe with her glasses on, and she just gets a big hammer and smashes the crap out of it. So I was in from that point. I was like, yeah, I like this. This is what I'm in the mood for.
It's so funny because my reaction was like the complete opposite, because the puzzle bits, they annoyed me, because it was there wasn't any effort that went into it. It was very coincidental that they all get the puzzle at the same time, that they all call each other at the same time, that they all solve, each one like helps sort of solve the thing, but there's very minimal effort going into solving this ludicrous puzzle. And I don't mind the idea of this box being ludicrous, but how quickly they solve it and how pointless the solve was to the overall plot. I sort of expected something in this stupid puzzle to come back and be a thing towards the end, particularly the music, because there's this music gag, and they bring in the composer Yo-Ho Ma, who just sticks his head in the screen for a minute to tell you a little bit about music, and then goes away.
That's who it was.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, music must come into this at some point, and then it never does again. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, this is a cheap gag, because this gag has nothing to do with this is just an elaborate way of getting an invitation.
And it wastes 15 minutes.
Yes. No, it doesn't. It does have a thing, because the whole sort of story it eventually revolves around the idea of the glass onion. The secret at the center that is transparent is that Miles Bron is not a genius. And the whole thing is that he's made this elaborate thing. They are literally opening going, oh, Miles, you genius. But it's not genius. He's overpaid. So Benoit Blanc later finds out that he's overpaid some assistant of Ricky Jay, some puzzle guy who's invented it for him, and he's passed it off himself. That's the clue. The clue is that he hasn't even made the flipping thing. Like, he hasn't made the mystery. He's paid Gillian Flynn to do it. That's the point of it. It's an elaborate look at me and how clever I am, and yet it's not real. He's a huckster. Is that not it coming back? I mean, to me, that's a payoff.
Yeah, I think I'm more in James's camp than Luke and Vass there. I thought it did serve a purpose, but I agree that.
Yeah, but then you might argue that it the fact that he makes up these idiotic words, which no one in their right mind would make up words like imbreviate, and that's supposed to be the big clue that our intrepid Benoit Blanc.
But it's not the only clue, is it? The clue about
Blanc himself uses the word mistruthing in Knives Out.
But that's him being the whole foghorn leghorn.
Yeah.
It's more like his snobbery.
He accuses Miles of being dumb because he makes up words, and I think, well, you made a word up 2 years ago.
We can talk about that. This is anyway. Spoilers on the whole film. We're gonna be all over the place. Yeah. So just so anyone who's listening, spoilers. Also, like and subscribe. Anyway, I keep wanting to call him LeBlanc because I'm thinking of Matt LeBlanc from Friends.
All right, yeah.
but Blanc, him criticizing Miles, Edward Norton's character, him criticizing him and calling him stupid, really doesn't hold weight, because he's clearly not stupid. Because he is the one who's orchestrated all of their careers. He's the one who is blackmailing them into servitude. He's the one who, while yes, he did steal his partner's, code to become, super rich or whatever. He's still the one behind all that. He's still orchestrating quite a lot of stuff. And I'm gonna jump way ahead and mention the first murder, when at the end when Blanc tries to say that it was stupid of him to kill Dave Bautista's character Duke. In that way. Well, actually, no, that's a perfect crime. He died of an allergy.
That wasn't stupid. Yeah, I remember thinking that is clever, because regardless of whether he did it on purpose or not, it would work. Like it,
yes.
He's poisoned. I mean, what's stupid about it is the contrivance of it. The fact that he happens to have some pineapple. Whether he's pre-planned that, he doesn't know he needs to kill Dave Bautista, so he hasn't pre-planned it. He's just immediately thought, I'm going to give him this. Well, I think what's stupid about it is the idea that I don't know if that would kill him. Or you certainly couldn't be confident that it would kill him. But
he sets it up. Dave Bautista, when he gets his COVID spray in the mouth, says, "There's no pineapple in here, right?"
It is set up, and it's a properly delivered clue. And I think it's right. I think it is. It's a clever way of getting rid of somebody. I mean, I'm not a scientist by any stretch, so if taking it for granted that it could kill you, it's a good way of getting, because there'll be no traceable poisons that there normally are in the golden age and stuff. But it wouldn't take long for the police to do some investigation and find out he had a fatal allergy to pineapple, and then find a bottle of pineapple in, Miles's recycling.
Well, there probably would be traces of it in the glass. I mean, really,
tracing it in the glass. But,
there are problems.
Sillier things happen in Agatha Christie than that. And we forgive those. So,
but I mean, there are some unforgivable things, though. There are several unforgivable things, certainly from my personal point of view. I mean, the whole twins thing, using twins. I mean, that's a no-no in crime fiction. You can't use twins as your.
For how many years have those rules been enforced, Vas? When did Knox write in the 1920s?
Too long. So Rian Johnson clearly has never read any real crime fiction if he thinks he can get away with that. So that's a no-no. And then anybody who understands anything about the world. So two things. So one, this miracle hydrogen gas of his. The idea that a state governor can push it through, wishy-washy one at that, or that it can be piped into millions of American homes without proper testing and government approval, just because Edward Norton wants it to. Absolute nonsense. Absolutely ridiculous. That's one thing. And then secondly, anything who knows anything about the corporate world. So this whole plot hinges on the fact that he stole the business and cut out what's her face, whose name Janelle.
Andy.
Andy. Right. Because she wrote something on a napkin. And if you look at the close-up of the napkin, all it just says some fancy buzzwords like diversification, and there's no code on it. It's just loaded up. I actually looked at it. I paused it and looked at it. It's just nonsense.
Well done.
And it says, and the fact is that she's been working with him for a very long time. They've built this massive, globally successful billion-dollar business.
Yeah.
So that implies that she was clearly a shareholder, because it was her bloody napkin. You cannot throw shareholders out of a business by some. Rian Johnson writes in the dialogue some clever legal trick. Yeah. There is no clever legal trick that can take away half of your company because he retrospectively asserts intellectual property rights. That's absolute nonsense from every possible angle. And I was a management consultant for a decade before I joined UCL, and we deal with the IP all the time. I'm sorry, it's just bollocks. All of it. It's nonsense. The whole movie falls flat just on that one ridiculous assertion. Now, you can cut people out at the very beginning. So if they'd been drunk in the bar, she wrote some code, he took the napkin, he went away, he started the business, made millions, like, what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg. And then you come back and say, wait a minute, that was my idea 20 years ago in a pub. You cannot work with the guy for a decade and build $1 billion business together, as they said. Yeah. And then suddenly wake up one day and realize that you don't have a share of the business, and that he can just cut you out like that. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. I totally agree. I can't disagree with that. In the chat, just real quickly, Biffer says that Edward Norton's character reminds him of Ray Kroc stealing McDonald's from the founders. Sure, except Ray Kroc was smart about it. Like, that made sense. What do you guys think about that? Matt and James.
I mean, I defer to your experience on those issues. I would say, like, it didn't bother me. Like, I just get it. He's kind of screwed her in business. I don't really need to know the details. Like, it's a bit like I was saying earlier on about Knives Out. Like, sometimes the plots of these things don't matter to me that much. She's been screwed over. That's all I really need to know. And with regards to the thing about the little thing in his hand, the air thing, I mean, you say it wouldn't happen. I mean, it didn't happen. He doesn't get it through. And the whole thing is hinged on the idea that he's an idiot. The point is he's trying to get it through. He's trying to get the scientists to write off on it. He's trying to get it through the state. There's no indication that he's actually going to succeed. That's what
what I mean is that we're led to believe that both the governor and this respected world famous scientist actually believe him enough to want to come to this island and kill him. No proper scientist would ever believe that this thing could go through, and no governor worth their salt would ever believe that they could get something. Look what's happening in the American Congress right now. They can't get anything through. They're not going to get this through untested. No. That could blow your house up, or everyone's houses up. Nonsense.
It was odd that it was already powering his house as well. I think for me, what irked me about it was it felt like where Knives Out was kind of your basic murder mystery stuff. It was well enough grounded in reality. This felt like it was dipping its toes into just pure science fiction, which I didn't quite like. And as you're saying, go on.
I was going to say it's much more heightened as a style. It's much more kind of like not the real world. It's more, in some ways, more comic booky.
Yes,
it is. And I think it loses something because of that. Because I agree with Luke that the Knives Out is much more. That in itself is a heightened version of reality, but it's a reality I at least recognise.
Yeah.
And
so, Matthew, did you prefer Knives Out?
I preferred Knives Out.
All right, okay.
I preferred Knives Out. It seemed to me to pull two films from the past. Glass Onion seemed to me to be going all out for laughs, which again, I have no problem with that. But I
feel like Sherlock Holmes 2.
That's exactly what I said to my wife, Luke. I said, this is like Downey Jr. Holmes films. The first one didn't have really that much to do with Doyle, but I could see him in there somewhere. But it was a mystery with a few gags in it.
Yeah.
The second one is all out gags with a bit of mystery in it.
Yes.
Now, if that's what it's going to be, I think it should be sold as that.
Yeah.
Because to me, it felt a lot like, and I know this is intentional, but it was a lot like Peter Ustinov's Evil Under the Sun.
Yeah.
Compared to Albert Finney's Murder on the Orient Express, which I'll say for the sake of this debate is Knives Out. One is very comical in its own right, but takes its material very seriously. And the other is an out-and-out comedy. But what Evil Under the Sun does is it has all those costumes and all that bombastic music, and it has Ustinov going over the top, but being serious when he needs to be. That it works much better for me. There's a real cheapness to one of the tricks in Glass Onion for me, and that is when you think that she's being shot, and he cries, because he also cries with Martyr in Knives Out, and I thought this is good, and then it turns out that he's stuck chili sauce in his eyes.
But also, why would he cry?
It cheapens the whole thing for me, and it cheapens the character for me.
Yeah. But why would he cry? Like, think about from the audience perspective. Why is he crying at that moment in time? We do not know that is not Andy and that is actually Helen who he's working with. Why is he crying?
Yeah. Why is no one else checking the body? Why is everyone else just taking it for granted? And the whole, bullet hitting a book and being stopped again. Again, these are, I'm being slightly tongue in cheek because I know that possibly we're supposed to just take all of this with a pinch of salt because it's it's technically a comedy. It's not, but don't sell it to me as another Knives Out. Don't sell it to me, as Matthew says, another.
That's exactly my point, Vass.
Pancake.
Selling it as a sequel to Knives Out, it needs to be in the same tone.
Knives Out kind of was a comedy as well, though. And did you see the marketing for this film? I mean, I don't think anyone would look at the trailer or the poster and think, "Oh, this is going to be like a serious." I mean, it was out. I think it was advertised as a comedy. Is my point.
It definitely was advertised as a comedy.
Made it look like a comedy.
I agree. It's definitely advertised as a comedy. And that doesn't bother me because there's great comedy crime movies out there. You know, Cluedo is actually is quite fun. A lot of Shane Black's movies are crime that are ludicrous and have lots of comedy that are really fun. It's just that with Glass Onion versus Knives Out, I think it's that the Glass Onion went so ludicrous with its plot and its comedy that where Knives Out felt sort of grounded in real world, right? Like it's sort of like you can kind of envision this house, this family, this scenario. The bickering, you sort of get it, but it's all done a bit hyper. But for me with Glass Onion, everything was just so unbelievable, from the magical gas stuff to even like the magical COVID spray. Like if Edward Norton's character has this cure for COVID, you just spray it in your mouth and boom, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. Like he should be raking in lots of money off of that alone.
Yeah, but again, has he got a COVID thing? I mean, we don't know that it works. As far as we know, they've all got COVID at the end. Like, it's kind of like what he's doing is he's getting them to go on the boat and you don't need to do the masks anymore. Like, it's basically kind of like they're killing the mask thing. Yeah. Like, so it's kind of like he's doing it so that they're not in masks when they're on his island.
But here's the thing. Did we even need any of that?
No, we didn't. Because they can be on the right if he's just set in a if he doesn't specify the time. I'm not going to say, well, wouldn't this be COVID time? You know, right. It can be in a sort of just general modern day time. I didn't think we needed any of that.
There's a few things like that.
I quite like the COVID stuff at the beginning, and the thing I liked about it was just that character thing of like it's telling you who they all are. Like the scientist turns up, he's got the mask on. Kate Hudson turns up and she's got netting on her mouth. And we all knew that idiot. And then Duke turns up and he's like she's misunderstood the science of it with her netting. He's like, obviously doesn't care because he's an obnoxious guy. And I kind of think not only that, but it kind of looked really cool when they were having their big reunion on the pier. And then they kept cutting to Daniel Craig looking at them. And he's got like a mask on and like sunglasses and a hat. And he looks like, he looks quite sinister. He looks like the Invisible Man or something. And I kind of think that it was just quite a cool kind of look, like an aesthetic. I thought it actually worked quite well. Like I say, I think we're learning about the characters without actually in a fairly fresh way. So
but I think we got that with the whole box sequence.
Yeah,
it was re-establishing. I take your point, James, and obviously there's something there, but I think it's just duplication of what's gone before, and I'd rather have one or the other.
Personally, there are good things here, right? I mean, look, I've been very, very hypercritical, but it is glossy, and he spent $100 million or whatever he spent.
It looks great.
See that, and the second lead, you could say, Andy. I've forgotten her name now. It's Janelle.
Yes,
I thought she was terrific. She's a Grammy-winning music artist.
Yeah. It's the first film I've seen her in where I feel they know what to do with her. She's a very interesting talent. She's very kind of extra.
I think she's got a career ahead of her if she wants to.
She's a highlight in it, as is Anna, what's her name in Knives Out, who's in the last
Anna de Armas, who's currently she's not being sued, but she's involved in a lawsuit, which sort of, you say, James, that anyone who could have seen the trailer for Glass Onion should have known it's a comedy. Well, I didn't. I thought it was Knives Out, so it's almost bordering on false advertising. And what's happened, I think, is Anna de Armas was put on advertising for a film and then was cut from the final scenes. And a couple of cinema goers are now asking for some ludicrous sum, like $50 million or something in America. And if they win, it will completely change the film industry because they will have to, they might have to retrospectively pay out billions and billions to ordinary film fans if any of their advertising doesn't quite meet the hype.
I think we've just been given the plot. We've just been given the plot for Knives Out 3.
Matthew and I could probably sue Rian Johnson because our expectations were built up for Glass Onion. There'll be some shyster lawyer who'll be willing to take this to court for us.
I know a few of them, Vaz. I'll get in touch with them.
But I also thought Kate Hudson, she had some of the best lines because she was supposed to be from the beginning an idiot. I mean, there's a great line about her going on Oprah Winfrey and comparing herself to Harriet Tubman. I thought that was fantastic.
I thought she was hilarious all the way through it. It's the first film I've ever seen her in where she really reminded me of her mum, Goldie Hawn, because I love Goldie Hawn.
Yes.
And it was like I've liked Kate Hudson in the past, but I've never really seen. I've always thought she was, to use a modern term, a bit of a Nepo baby, bit of a like famous because she's got famous parents. But in this, I thought she was like hilarious, and like when I watched it the second time last night. Oh, she gets so many funny bits. Like even when they do that little squirt in the mouth, Ethan Hawke like squirts her in the mouth with the COVID, and her like double take to it is really funny. And I like the thing at the end as well when like they announce the twin. Like they sort of say, "Oh my god!" and it's her twin, and they're all online. She survived by a twin, and you're thinking like, who's got it and who hasn't got it? And even then, Kate Hudson's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about your twin sister Helen." And it's kind of like the last one to have worked it out. She had loads of bits. I think she was great.
Let's talk about the structure. Oh wait, go on. Carry on with your thoughts.
I was just going to say I can't remember if this was explained, but the stupid guy who keeps walking in and out of scenes.
He's just useless. He's a pointless red herring.
I thought that was funny. I didn't think it was a red herring. I sort of knew they were never going to explode.
James, that's literally the kind of thing that makes me want to punch Rian Johnson right in the face many times.
Wow.
If The Last Jedi didn't already do it for me.
Wow.
That's a different story. We could talk about that another day, but that's a totally different story. But
I mean, that is a whole other conversation. But again,
I mean, Luke materializing across the Luke suddenly discovering new powers and materializing across the universe and all that bollocks. I mean, sorry, no, that's not happening. But anyway, that's a different discussion. But this dude just randomly walking through a screen.
I mean, I thought that was funny. The whole setup of like it's just us. We're on this island. And then some random dude walks past.
I am absolutely. I am bang in the middle.
It wasn't really explained.
Could he have not been paid off?
For me, I didn't want to punch Rian Johnson in the face, but nor did I sort of laugh out loud at it. I just sort of thought, okay, a bit like when you see something in a scene and you think, well, what on earth was that all about? Sometimes Monty Python do things that are just so surreal. You think, what's going on here? It was almost like remember the famous scene in Twin Peaks where a llama comes past and looks Carl Clacton straight in the face, and they do a double take with each other, then it walks off, and you think, well, what's all that about? To me, it was just that,
Oh, I just thought of another thing that was funny. I like the bit where Benoit Blanc is listening in on Edward Norton having a conversation with Peg, and he's hiding behind this bronze statue with this big arse. Yes. And as he walks off, they just linger on the arse for a little bit too long. And I mean, I thought that was funny. Maybe I've got a silly sense of humor, but that's the thing I would like to have seen in a cinema. I just thought it was funny. Anyway, obviously, like you guys are looking at me like the Easter Island statues, but I thought it was funny. I thought it was.
I tell you what. I think
I should say I was probably a bit pissed when I was watching it.
That might have helped.
But I was laughing.
I do think part of the reason why I didn't find things funny is because I was too annoyed by the plot because there was no plot. For the first hour, like nothing happens. Like, yes, Blanc is hiding behind a big bronze ass while he's listening to a conversation. We don't know why he's doing that.
He's doing it to listen to the motive, to listen to
I know, but hang on. We don't know what he's doing. The viewer has no idea.
But we do know. I mean, we get it. He's an investigator. He's investigating.
Yes, but we don't know why he's doing it. We don't know what he's investigating. We have no idea what he's actually doing at that point. Same way when he's hiding behind the bush and he sees Edward Norton banging the Dave Bautista's girlfriend. It's like, okay, he's catching these people do things and say things, but what are we doing? Like, what is happening? Like, this has to be more than just he doesn't know who's invited him to the island.
I mean,
this might be a structure issue, I think, because there are
It's
several.
a structure issue. It's terrible.
I think the structure's
There are
great.
definite
It's
parallels
really
with
clever. I think it's
early
absolutely cut the deck on the classic Agatha Christie structure. It's kind of over halfway through, and then you go back and then you see the whole story again from a different perspective.
Oh, and that pissed me off so bad.
That's like I wouldn't say my favorite thing about it, but that's the thing I think is really clever. This is where we're on totally. I mean, I love The Last Jedi, so you and I are on totally different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
I love.
I think going back to
What I
your point,
liked about
hanging around behind bushes and behind gold houses and things like that.
it was a bronze ass.
The way it's done is wrong, I think, because I'm going to go back to the Finney Orient Express and the Ustinov films. There are several scenes in all three of those massive, extravagant Agatha Christie adaptations from the 70s and 80s, where a scene is played out, and as the two people have had an argument and walked off, Ustinov comes walking around the corner, or Finney gets up from a chair and he walks off, and you know that he's overheard that and that it's going to be important later. Right. So I think part of those are homages to that sort of scene in those films, but the reason they work better in those films is because at the time, Poirot isn't investigating and doesn't look as if he's investigating. It only becomes important when a murder has occurred. So I sort of agree that the way the film is structured means that Blanc is investigating before he knows for certain there's anything to investigate. To the audience. To the audience,
do we not think? I mean, I thought he was investigating a murder because I assumed there's going to be a murder. But like, I kind of assume that we're supposed to think at that point he's investigating the murder mystery that Edward Norton has concocted. Is that not like that's what he's officially there for? So I'm just kind of like, I think the audience is supposed to think that there is this, which I love, by the way. I love the fact that he killed the murder mystery before it even started. I thought that bit was great. And then the way the arrow landed in Edward Norton's chest. That's another bit I found funny. But I think that you're supposed to think he's doing that. But like, just knowing we're watching a murder mystery means, and he's a detective, I didn't really get stuck on the fact that what's he investigating? There is a in-world reason. When we watch the second half, we know that he's investigating a real murder. But even the first time, he's kind of investigating a kind of fake murder. So I mean, I didn't get stuck on that at all.
But there was no murder yet. There wasn't even a hint of a murder. There was a murder mystery. The only mystery we had was who invited him to the island. That's the only mystery we have. And then he's just lingering the rest of the time.
But he's still investigating it, right? Like he's still investigating the murder mystery that the Edward Norton one that he's created. At that point, it's not been revealed as fake, unless I'm getting my scenes mixed up. So
the murder mystery hasn't begun yet. The murder mystery didn't begin until
he'd still be investigating it. And also that's his game, isn't it? He's an investigator. You don't get an investigator. You don't become a detective by not being nosy. Like I just kind of think he's being Benoit Blanc. He's listening in.
Best detective, as everyone keeps saying.
Yeah.
Including did Hugh Grant say that as well? He turned up as his was he his husband, his partner?
I think that's the implication. I think he's meant to be like his partner. Yeah. Or husband. Or
I was just going to say, I've met a couple of real life policemen, and they often are conversationally in small talk interrogating you. I kind of buy the idea that he's just being a cop. He's being a detective. Like sometimes you realize, oh, God, this guy's not turned off. This guy, even in a social situation, is kind of behaving like a cop or a detective in his case. So I didn't get stuck on that. I didn't mind it. And I didn't find the first half boring. Like I was kind of aware a murder was coming. Again, going back to the Golden Age stuff, Death on the Nile, which is my favorite Agatha Christie novel, hated the recent film with Kenneth Branagh. That's the bad Golden Age homage we've had recently. But that's got that in the book. That murder happens at the midpoint. Like there's no murder prior. It happens, and there's this tension about there's going to be a murder. And this movie sets up the idea that the person who's going to get murdered is Edward Norton, and then it isn't.
Yeah.
And I kind of think I wasn't bored because I sort of trusted it that it was going somewhere. I wasn't like, oh my God, it's been 15 minutes. And
I can't say I was bored.
I was bored.
But I'm surprised by that. I thought it was really punchy. I'm surprised that you were bored.
I did.
Honestly, like
I wasn't bored. I was just annoyed for a large part of it. You got increasingly more annoyed. I've just seen this comment by Biffa, and this is going to set me off on another rant. Not at Biffa. So he says we expect the criminals and the good guys to win at the end. Now, looking at the context of these two films, so one of the things that actually did annoy me quite a lot by Knives Out, at the end of Knives Out, is this notion that this family, as dysfunctional as they are, somehow didn't deserve the $100 million fortune, and yet this sticky-fingered nurse who'd come along and just because she had a heart of gold deserved all of this. In spite, and there's a line in there that Walt says to her, right, when nothing has happened, nobody knows that she's done anything, and he says, the family, all of us, we want to take care of you financially. So they have told her that they're going to look after her, and yet she is even hesitating to give them their own bloody money back. Now, if I earned 100 million quid as a writer, I'd want it to go to my family, no matter how how arsey they were.
Yeah, but I can't remember Knives Out that well, but he doesn't want it to go to his family. Like, he literally says that it's in the will. So actually, her right is that he did want it to go to her.
He doesn't want to, but that doesn't mean they deserve it less than some nurse who popped up on the scene 3 minutes ago and suddenly has got a $100 million fortune landed in her lap. Yeah. No, they had to put up with it. They were his family.
My dad suddenly handed over his inheritance to some nurse in the final days of his life, I'd be a bit peeved.
I disagree completely that was not the good guys winning. I'm sorry, but I do not agree with that.
Building off of that, actually, I think we should talk about Helen stroke Andy, because there's a similar pattern between Knives Out and Glass Onion, in that there is the story seems, both stories revolve around a disenfranchised woman, right? Who is, Anna de Armas's character is screwed over by the family, and Helen is being screwed over because her sister Andy was murdered by Miles, Edward Norton's character. But just like Knives Out, in which the whole family is ejected from the house and she's standing on top of the balcony with her mug in her hand that says "My house" or whatever the mug says.
My house, my rules.
Yeah, that's it. You kind of get this thought, as you were saying, it's like, well, the family still probably deserves some of this inheritance. It is their family's money after all. You do, and therefore it puts this protagonist who has a heart of gold into a compromising position at the end. It's like, well, you are maybe no better than these people. And we have the same problem in Glass Onion, where at the end, where she, there's a lot of things to talk about the end, but I'll just focus on this at the moment. But when Andy is crushing all of the glass stuff, right, and then goes so far as to destroy the Mona Lisa for no purpose other than to just stick a knife in Edward Norton's character.
I thought that was really cool.
But why is she destroying one of the most valuable pieces of art in the world?
Because she is the true disruptor. When Edward Norton makes that speech about what is disruption, and I love that speech because Daniel Craig is going like, "What is this word disruption? What do you mean?" And he's really dumbing it down. And then Edward Norton goes, disruption is you start off with a few things, like you break an old rule here, you break a rule there, and at certain people start cheering you on and they agree. But at a certain point, you go too far, and the whole world, even your partners, want to stop you. And he's saying that about all these douchebags who are his friends. And not one of them is that. They're all just idiot. She's not telling it like it is, Birdie J. She's just an idiot who keeps putting her foot in it. Like, so they're all like charlatans, really. So they're flattering themselves with this posh word that they're disruptors. But when you get to the end, everything she does in that scene is what he said a disruptor does. And then they, including Edward Norton, are like, no. Proving that they're not really disruptors. She is. She's doing the thing that they don't agree with, which is, fuck you, I'm going to blow down the Mona Lisa. I'm going to blow down everything in this room because I'm angry. And in burning down the Mona Lisa, you are fucked because you're always going to be the guy that blowing down the Mona Lisa. So
and she's going to be the one going to jail for destroying the Mona Lisa.
And also, does she give a fuck? She's avenging her sister.
Like, I don't think destroying the Mona Lisa is good enough motivation for it. I don't think that's a worthy revenge.
I
Because
mean,
not only
but
does she blow up the
whose fault
entire,
is it that the Mona Lisa is in this room with all this, poisonous
the
gas?
Mona Lisa is protected behind a shelter that even survived the explosion.
That she opened.
His gas. And he's the guy that had it in the room. Who ships the Mona Lisa over just for your own ego? You can say she's in trouble, but like really, he's fucking ruined, which is what she cares about.
But she's just as ruined. She's probably going to jail for attempted murder, but she's almost murdered all those people in the room when she blew the whole place up.
Well, that's another thing. Why aren't they all dead? Was my first question.
I like the fact that no one gives a fuck about Duke's body in the burning in the other room. They've just left him there. That's really funny.
I'm going to say something contentious. I'm going to say that her sister probably deserved what she got for being so stupid. She found the napkin.
That is
right?
quite contentious.
She found the napkin, right? She found the napkin that supposedly proves that she's entitled to half his fortune and or whatever, or the whole damn company is hers. Really. Yeah. So what does she do? She emails it. Emails it to people instead of just going to the bloody lawyers and saying, "Here we go, let's get to court, let's get my company back." She deserves it. She deserves it. I'm sorry. She's an idiot.
If Ed Norton's got the wherewithal to burn the napkin, why does he have to hide it in a panel next to his version? Why didn't he burn it the minute he gets his hands on it?
Yeah.
So while we were watching the movie, I was writing down my predictions, and I'm gonna tell you my 4 predictions that I had along the way.
Okay, I've got one as well. Remind me to tell you afterwards.
Okay.
I was way off.
Okay, one was, this is early on when I was watching them do the box stuff, and I saw Andy just sitting there looking at the box. I turned to Claire and I said, she's gonna smash it with a hammer. And then she gets up, walks off the scene, comes back with a hammer and smashes it. And I was like, fuck's sake. I knew I highly suspected Miles to be the killer, but for a brief moment, I suspected that it might be an Agatha Christie Murder on the Orient Express kind of thing in which they were all involved. But my first thought was Miles, but I thought maybe that's too obvious, and then it came back to being Miles. That's boring.
I would agree.
I predicted. Say again.
I would agree with that a bit. I was a little bit disappointed that the DNA of this, in terms of plot, is actually not dissimilar to the DNA of the first movie, which is the second male lead, the second most famous actor in it is the killer. Yeah. I kind of think like you can't do that a third time. Yeah, like, it's kind of like the Marvel actor who is almost as famous as Daniel.
Every episode of Midsomer Murders, isn't it? The most famous person in it is the killer.
Yeah, that he's done that twice now. I would agree. I don't mind the actual plotting of it, but I'm more like to do with the casting. It can't be the second famous guy every time.
No.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's fine. The third thing that I predicted was that Helen was not dead. Well, at the time, we thought it was Andy.
Oh, I would agree. I did not think she was dead.
I was like, there's no way she's dead. And then they brought her back with that horrible cliche, which, funnily enough, was the same cliche that they used in this year's Death in Paradise Christmas special. They used the same gag of something being shot. You've been shot at the heart, but there's something there to block it. It's like
it's also any Blackadder fans watching will know that it's how he survives at the end of Blackadder the Third. I don't know if you remember the third series where there's the duel and they shoot Hugh Laurie. Yeah. Oh no, they shoot Rowan Atkinson, and then it turns out he's got a thing. So I was like, oh wow, Rian Johnson's seen Blackadder.
I'm fairly certain.
There's a great line there's a great line from Blackadder. I can't remember which one it is now. I think it's Blackadder 4, where Hugh Laurie is trying to be a painter, and he says, "Shall I put my clothes on the stool?" And Blackadder says, he says something. Art is about willing suspension of disbelief. And then Blackadder comes back or Hugh comes back with no one staring in disbelief at my willy suspension. But this is what these films are about. I guess you've got to suspend your disbelief, go with the flow, and enjoy it if that's the ride that you want to go on. I personally
think that was my thing. Is that I did sort of suspend my disbelief. It's why I wasn't from a lot of the things you're saying. I don't think you're wrong. I think you're absolutely right. I just suspended my disbelief, so I didn't care. I was enjoying it too much.
Yeah, and the last thing that I predicted was that the napkin was behind the fake napkin. And lo and behold, that's where it was. And I was like, so therefore, all of these things, when I'm predicting them and then they're happening, it's undercutting my excitement, especially with Helen's fake death. Where
Helen's fake death, I did get.
We spent a whole hour watching this film, watching something happen, and then we have to go back and rewatch the entire thing. And then it's bizarre that before the flashback, we have Helen's death, fake death. And then the last scene that we get really before we catch up to where we left off is Daniel Craig's Blanc saying, oh, I don't want you to come because you might get hurt. And it's like, well, you know what? God damn it. If you had done this in a linear fashion, this story, you could have built up some tension. For me, there was no escalating stakes or tension because, well, we've already seen her die, but now we're going back in time and we know she's going to die, but she's probably not dead because she's not who she says she is, because that would be just really cruel to do. And I don't think they're going to do that. So it's like, well, at least if you'd gone from the beginning where he's in the bathtub bored, and then she turns up and you just go that way and you develop their friendship and their relationship. Because, I was like, that's partly what bugged me, like on a structural side, while also all of these stupid predictions. But James, what was you said you predicted something. What was it?
Oh yeah, I know this is way off, but about I would say probably about an hour in, I was trying to think who is the killer.
Yeah,
I'm trying to outthink Rian Johnson, and I didn't think it would be Edward Norton, principally because I thought that's too close to it being Chris Evans. Like to be honest, that was and that is a mild criticism that I have. It didn't ruin it for me, but I was a bit disappointed, as I said earlier, that it's always the second most famous actor in it. Yeah. But I remember thinking this time he's going to go for the hidden in plain sight killer. And I thought there was this constant motif all the way through it about Peg, who is the assistant of Kate Hudson. Yeah. I never thought Kate Hudson was the killer. I never thought Catherine Hahn was the killer, because I didn't think he'd have the balls to make it a mum. I didn't think Dave Bautista was the killer because I didn't think he respected him enough to get the character to give him that much. Yeah. And I don't think I really thought it was Leslie Odom Jr. either. I thought it was Peg. And the reason I thought it was Peg was it was this classic thing of like they're all getting off the boat and Edward Norton's going up and hugging them all. And he doesn't even respond to her. He hugs his friends, but he ignores essentially the staff. And then I thought, oh, it's going to be. And then later on, like there was quite a good joke where she says, like she's talking to Edward Norton, and he says, she says, like, if you do this to Buddy J, my name will be ruined. And then he goes, and it's clear he doesn't know her name. So I remember thinking, oh, that's the killer that we're sort of forgotten. They're making a big deal about the fact that there's these 5 friends. She's not really one of the friends. She's an appendage. So I spent the entire time thinking there's going to be some revealed motive where maybe she's in love with someone, or maybe she's got some financial stake we don't know about yet, and she's going to be the killer because she's the least famous person on the cast list.
He follows up.
That might have been the opposite of what he did last time.
Yeah, so and he follows that up with the named glasses. He gives her a plastic cup, presumably full of
water. Oh yeah, he doesn't care about it. Yeah.
And I have to say, I would have preferred that as a solution, 100%, tenfold.
That's where my brain would have been had I been right.
Tenfold.
But I didn't mind that. I quite like the satire of making it essentially an Elon Musk type and the kind of debunking of the genius myth. All these people think he's a genius, but actually he's not. And I know we're saying that actually the pineapple thing is quite clever, but I sort of get the idea that he's not he's not actually that smart. He's kind of like a huckster. And it's kind of, so I quite like what was being said at the end by it being him, rather than the actual logic of it. I kind of like the kind of, I quite like the idea of making that arsehole the murderer. And I like the idea that he's revealed as the murderer because he's an idiot. That's what Benmore Blanc realizes. To me, it's like, again, it's like a joke rather than a plot idea.
You should have made a comedy.
Yeah, but it was a comedy. He did. Like that's I think where I'm coming from. It was a comedy, and it's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, I don't think I went into this movie thinking this is going to be like LA Confidential. Like,
No.
Yeah.
By the way,
fact that
speaking of the Matthew, you brought up the drinks with all the names on it as a little motif, as a little reference
There you
to
go.
Glass Onion. I've gone for the whole name on the drink thing.
I don't have any. I didn't put my name on.
Hilarious.
I
That's
didn't
as
put
funny
my
as a
name on
Rian
that.
Johnson joke by your responses.
I think what you have to ask yourself is when you finish a film like this, is would I watch another one in this franchise?
No.
And you know, I probably would, but I'd go into the next one. I would go into the next one saying to myself, look, this is going to be absolute bollocks in terms of factual accuracy or crime novelization or whatever. Enjoy it as a comedy because there'll be some big actors who, I love Ed Norton ever since Primal Suspect, Primal Fear. I can't remember.
Primal Fear, yeah, that's a bit of a blast from the past. That was great.
That was a great film.
Film that made him famous.
He was amazing in it.
Based on a really brilliant book as well. I don't know if anyone's read the book, but the book is brilliant.
So did you guys notice? Because I did. At first, Claire didn't, but I when Edward Norton made the drink, I saw him hand it to Dave Bautista.
I didn't notice that. No,
I didn't notice that.
I saw it and I said, turned to Claire. I was like, he just handed him that drink. He's gonna die.
Oh wow, that's really good. I mean,
my wife noticed it as well.
And Claire was like, "What he did?" So we rewound it so she could see. She's like, "Oh yeah, he just did that."
Oh wow, that's.
I'll tell you what I didn't notice and what is there, and I take my hat off to the film for this. When you learn when Kate Hudson's doing, she breaks the idiot persona for a while and talks about how she had a thing for him.
Oh yeah, I preferred him when he was in my hand.
When he was, and then it turns out that who you think is Andy is sitting next to her, and then then later on it transpires she's put a recorder in the back. When it's in the second half of the film, you do when it's cut from the other angle, you do see the bag move. So and I only saw that on second viewing, and I have to say, well, good on you then, because that's a much better trick than the glass thing, which was very clumsily done.
Yes. Now, I have a few more things that we can talk about. There's also other things that I want to mention as well, because I know James, we kind of talked about the complications of it being in cinema and then only for a short period of time. But there's a few more things story wise that I want to talk about before we jump to that bit. And this is again where I'm getting frustrated with the plot, and that's really when they all arrive. And when everyone arrives and you got Blanc there and you got Andy there, at that point in time, Miles should know that something is up. There's no reason for him to not, because either A, that is Andy and she's not dead, or B, it's the twin sister.
Yeah.
But the fact that one of those two have turned up with the world's most famous detective who's been mysteriously invited, and he's just kind of shrugging it off as if, oh, we'll just see what happens. It's like, well, what?
No, but there is that quite long shot on Edward Norton's face where he's just aghast when he sees her coming up. So it's not like they haven't shown that. They've shown, and then he's like, I need to act normal because even if he's, whether or not he just thinks Andy's, the poison didn't work, or whether or not he's thinking it's the twin sister, he's still got to act normal. He's still got to act like he doesn't know.
True, but then he does nothing.
It's not like they didn't show it. They showed the shock on his face.
Yes, but then he seems to be like doing nothing. Like she's just kind of walking around the compound, not really hanging out with anybody because really she's doing work for Blanc, right? But we don't ever see him trying to work out what she is doing here. How is she here? Why is she here? Or who is she? I'm pretty sure that if we were in his position, we would be like, I need to get this person alone as soon as possible and find out what's going on.
He does try and shoot her with a gun. In fact, he thinks he shot her with a gun. So, I mean, he's doing something. It's only that's the same day. So, I mean, he's got a gun and tried to shoot her. So,
but in a very contrived way. Very contrived way. How he goes about finally shooting her was like the steps he had to go to do that were ridiculous. Yeah. Because he fakes someone trying to kill him by killing this other guy and stealing his gun, which, again, if the police turn up, it's still one of the people in the house.
Yeah.
So
also, this is another thing about film sometimes that really annoys me. If you shoot through glass, if the glass is thick enough, it can affect the trajectory of the shot.
Oh wow! Oh, good knowledge. I like that.
We're all writing that down now.
I tell you what. I mean, this doesn't happen in Knives Out or Glass Onion, but this is the most annoying thing in films for me. It's when an explosion goes off.
Yeah.
And the lead just turns around and coolly walks away.
Oh yeah. That's a real
the explosion framed in the background. What a load of
I hate that.
No
it's
human
so
in the history,
overused.
no one in the history of explosions has ever walked calmly away.
Away from an explosion, yeah.
And
also, it's such a cliche.
Get a piece of shrapnel in the back of your head. Anyway, so that kind of thing of shooting through windows and books getting in the way of bullets and all that.
Go back to your point, Luke. I agree. There ought to have been some, even if it was a suggestion that he's had a conversation with her, but preferably a scene, and especially after she's done that whole thing where she's drunk and she says, "You're all beholden to him." She's creating a tension there, and you can tell from Blanc's expression that is not something that's been planned.
Yeah.
So there ought to be some comeback from that for her, from one or the other of them, or certainly both. And I agree that he's got a choice here. He's got to clarify for himself who she is. And I get that he's got to keep normal and all the rest of it. And you're right, James. There is that long close up of him, which does address the issue to a certain extent. But he then does nothing with it. And I feel that I think he would, and I think he should, if only to clarify whether he's got to kill her again or what the sister wants. Because if he knows it's the sister, she could be there for blackmail purposes, in which case he's got to deal with it.
Yeah.
So the fact that he does nothing and just sort of merrily goes around being an arse doesn't really do anything for me.
When she confronts him in that scene, the disruptor scene where he does the disruptor speech, she walks in halfway through his chat and he says, "When I set up Alpha," and then he sees her. Now, if he thinks she's the sister at that point, he does say, "The Andy," she says something like, "Oh, you like bullshit," or something. And then he says, "The Andy I knew used to believe it too." Now, that to me could be a suggestion that he knows this isn't the Andy he knew. He says, "The Andy I knew agreed with me." Now, that could be an acknowledgement of like, I know you're the sister. So I don't know. Maybe I'm making
and for me, that I agree. But you could also read it, couldn't you, as you've changed sort of thing. But knowing what he does, he knows, or at least he's got a good idea.
I think that is actually more likely what you just said there. I think my one's wrong, but like I'm just sort of like.
Either way, I think he should address it with her.
Yeah.
And given that they've all been best friends for a great many years since they were young, of course they must all know that she's got a twin sister.
Yeah.
They must know the twin sister reasonably. Well,
I mean,
right?
I've got to say that
this is the thing about twins in crime fictions. Just it doesn't work. It can't. It's too ridiculous. It's too much of a cheat.
Look,
they come out of nowhere, and like you say, Vas, people have known these people for 20 odd years, and they've kept the fact that there's a sibling secret.
The other thing about that is the friend thing is that I like this movie, so I'm not making apologies for it, and I'm not going to make apologies for it, and I'm not like hitting it either. But the bit in the bar when it shows you how they all met in a bar, those four people are not friends. Like those are four different species of human. Like there's nothing in common. Like she used to be a successful model, and she's hanging out with this gamer nerd, and the guy who at that point is a teacher.
This is true.
Yeah.
Which is true. Like I say, I don't really care about that, but I do accept that there's a lot of like wouldn't happen in this. That's not happening. These guys are not buddies.
Yeah. The whole thing, the whole setup works better for me in The Last of Sheila from the 70s, where it's the same. It's essentially the same plot, and there's a reference to it in the film with the photo of them in the Glass Onion bar where they're in a line. There's a similar photo in The Last of Sheila, which is actually a very important clue.
Mm.
And they're all people from the film business. And James Coburn is the Ed Norton of The Last of Sheila. And he invites them all onto his yacht. But because they're all film people, they all hate each other, but pretend to like each other. And that works far, far better because the cattiness is just under the surface at first. And then as it gets more tense, it all comes out. So there's no suggestion that these people are friends. You know, and for that reason, Jay, I agree with you that, you know, there's no way that I buy that these people have
no.
kept in touch.
I liked in that scene though, the one thing I really liked, and I only got this on second viewing. This is a bit niche, but when Edward Norton shows up and Janelle Monáe's introducing them to the gang, he's dressed in this very specific way. And when I first saw it, I was like, "Who the fuck is he dressed as?"
Oh
yeah, he had very specific hair.
Yeah,
it was only on the second viewing where I realized he's dressed exactly like Tom Cruise's character in Magnolia. Who is perfect for that guy. like there's a misogynistic, truth-teller, disrupted dickhead. And
I should have won an Oscar for that, Tom Cruise, but they're never going to give him an Oscar.
Yeah,
they're never going to give him an Oscar.
That guy would admire not so much Tom Cruise's performance, as we all do, but the
Yes.
actual character. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so I thought it was perfect.
But there's
But I
another
also
thing.
thought it was funny that I didn't get it the first time.
I tend to love that sort of stuff. Nods to other things. I
Yeah.
love that in films. And in Knives Out, you know, the Jolly Jack Tar sailor figure from Sleuth is in Christopher Plummer's house.
Which one? The Michael Caine version or the crappy new version?
In the Michael Caine version, yeah.
The crappy new one.
Christopher Plummer's written
one
a book
of the worst movies I've ever seen. The Michael
It's
Caine
bad.
and Jude Law.
Oh, yeah, or the original one.
Oh,
Brilliant.
finally, we agree on something. The second
So Andy and her friends. So this is another reason why, aside from her colossal stupidity and not tying up her intellectual property properly, I think Andy's bit unfair on her friends or non-friends or whatever you want to call them. So the whole thing is that they all went to court. She claimed ownership of the company, and they sided with Miles because he had the cash, right? Well, the truth is that 99 out of 100 people would probably do exactly the same thing because, as she rightly points out, or her sister rightly points out, they have been glued to this golden teat for a very long time.
Yeah.
Why would they give up the golden teat? And most people would not give up the golden teat.
I mean, I feel that Rian Johnson is doing that in getting into bed with Netflix. I don't judge him. I would do it if I wrote a book and Rian Johnson, like, you know. But the idea that Rian Johnson would rather
the guys who did Game of Thrones, I think they were given $150 million to go away and do what they want with. I don't know if it was Netflix or HBO, or whoever, but they basically, once you've proved your level of success, they just give you a huge chunk of cash and say, do what the hell you want with it.
What you want.
Until they take it away, because I think they were going to do a Star Wars film or a show, and
I don't know what they've done in the end, because
they were meant to, and then it got canceled mysteriously after Game of Thrones season 8. But I want to run a few.
Sorry, going back to the film, even though everyone would do it, you're absolutely right. I probably would do it. Most people would do it. That doesn't make it right. It's still a wrong thing to sort of like perjure yourself in court and say someone else invented something. So even though lots of people would do it, that doesn't let them off. Doesn't let us off.
You say perjury, I say realism.
But also, but actually, to that point though, when at the end, when everything is destroyed and they're all sitting there, and then suddenly all of Andy's friends are like, you know, they suddenly turn and they're like, oh yes, no, I saw the napkin. Yes, I saw the napkin. Da, 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 da. I'm like, Claire and me both talked about it. We were like, wait a minute, like, you're not going to perjure yourself. You will all lose your careers. You will probably all go to jail.
But wouldn't they rather that than get involved with, like, he's about to crash, like, and they probably all think, fuck it, time to sell shares in this prick. They probably think, they can probably say, oh, actually, I was mistaken. I was this or the other. They can get out of that legally. He's just destroyed the Mona Lisa. At least that's how it's going to look.
Well, no, she destroyed the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, but that's not how it's going to be reported, because the papers don't know who she is. So it's going to be reported that he destroyed the Mona Lisa, and he technically did. He put the Mona Lisa in a room with this gas. Like, it was incredibly, like, Mona Lisa shouldn't be in his fucking glass onion.
The problem with Edward Norton being alive, with his character Miles being alive, is that if this went to court, he would be able to say, well, she blew up my place. She pressed the button to open the Mona Lisa. Fingerprints are going to be on that.
And there's still no proof that he murdered.
And there's still no proof that he murdered.
So Duke doesn't get any justice at all.
Now, the other problem is I have some plot holes that I want to run past you guys and see what you think. And then we'll talk about the Netflix stuff. So one of those is that Blanc saying without the napkin, they have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree or disagree before I tell you why he's wrong?
Okay, that's interesting. So say it again. He's saying without the napkin, we've got nothing that proves.
Yes, and then he walks away, and then she goes apeshit and starts destroying everything.
Yes.
Is he right or is he very wrong?
And is he right about the fact that they've got nothing proving that they've killed that
he killed Duke?
Nothing. Yeah, he says we have nothing now to pin on him. He's gotten away with everything.
Well, first of all, you have to prove the provenance of the napkin, right? You have to prove definitively that was written by her. So maybe handwriting experts could prove that Andy had written the napkin.
Well, the napkin is destroyed, and no one else, and there's no other copy of it. And Andy didn't take a picture of it. She took a picture of a stupid envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which is ridiculous.
So
because the napkin does prove the time it was written, because it's got the
that is
a photo of it.
But do they really have nothing on Miles?
I kind of think so, but it sounds like you have a.
You should give us warning of these questions, Luke, before you throw.
Yeah, I haven't prepped for this.
All right, it's all right. All right. It just makes me sound like Sherlock Holmes now.
Yeah.
Okay, so one, Helen has been going around this compound all day long, gathering incriminating evidence via recordings, right?
Yes.
She has a whole bunch of shit on these people now.
Yeah.
That can put them in a very bad light. Two, both Helen and Blanc have the goddamn fax machine faxes that have their emails, that have the picture of Helen saying, I'm going to destroy him because I have something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's quite incriminating. Not only that, Blanc witnessed and Helen got shot.
Mm-hmm.
There's proof that she got shot by the guy, by the bullet in the pocket and in her clothes. Yeah. Somebody shot her, and it's one of the people in that house. No one is getting away from that. That alone is enough to have a massive court case go down, and no one is getting out of that one.
But I mean, is that a plot hole, or does that fix it? Like you were saying earlier about how's he going to be brought to justice? That seems like that's that stuff. Like she can walk out of there and give it to the press, who will be more powerful in this instance than the police.
Except Blanc.
This is Miles Bron for you.
Except Blanc, who is meant to be the world's greatest detective, says, well, we got nothing. There's nothing we can do.
And presumably, the fax receipts are now all burnt to cinders because she's blown the place to smithereens.
Well, he has them. Someone has them somewhere. They took them in there. They were in their hands. So they have them somewhere. Maybe in one of their rooms.
Location, were they either?
Validity of the fax machine aside.
They right, yeah, I suppose. I mean, that is a good point. They are evidence.
Yes.
Who has a fax machine anyway? Who has a fax machine in this day and age?
That's a bit like the video in Knives Out. Like, why is it
buy one? You just can't. You can't even buy them anymore. It's not like retro vinyl players or whatever, gramophones, or whatever you call it. I mean, you can't go out and buy a fax machine anymore, practically, unless you're living in the third world. And he's a billionaire tech entrepreneur.
Well, I assume he can afford fax machines. If a billionaire wants to say, "I need a fax machine,"
but the idea that he would want to have fax machines, it's
ridiculous,
ludicrous.
Is it not like a drug dealer wanting a burner phone? It's kind of like old tech; they'll never do it. But then in a way, it's worse in terms of evidence because of the
reason he literally calls himself a billionaire. I mean, he's a billionaire.
So that's why that for me really didn't work. So I'm like, there's too many things that have happened in this 12-hour day that
could do it. Yeah.
Once the police arrived and you start telling the police all this stuff, well, no one's going off that island because someone shot someone intentionally with intent to kill. Right?
So why is that a problem? It's only a problem. I get what you're saying in terms of like, why hasn't Benoit Blanc worked this out? But in terms of the ending, I mean, that's the ending. Like there's going to be an investigation, which means that the truth will come out. If anything, he should have said it to sort of make it clear that there is going to be an investigation.
It falls down in terms of the genre that it's trying to be, because the cliche of all the, with the exception of one that occurs, the cliche of all the people on an island, they're all being, and there's murders committed, and then a Poirot for ease of reference solves it. He doesn't necessarily solve it enough for a courtroom. His proof is often circumstantial.
Yeah.
But the suggestion is always that when the police arrive, the great detective will say, I've done your job the best I can on this remote island. Yeah. Here is my evidence. You need to go and do something with it now.
Yeah.
Whereas when Blanc's self-satisfyingly puffing away on his cigar with Daryl, and the police are arriving over the ocean, there's none of that. He hasn't succeeded in doing any of that. So I think that is a problem in saying that this is a golden age homage, because if you're going to do one of those, you need to comply as far as you can, and the solution is one of the biggest parts of it. And I don't think it works. I think the expose sequence where he's walking around the bar and he's doing all that business, and especially in Knives Out, it works extremely well.
Yeah.
But the aftermath, it's almost as if that scene, the drawing room scene, is the end, and the rest of it just doesn't really matter. Whereas in proper Golden Age, it does matter, because there is always the killer's contrition or arrogance still, or whatever there is. But it ends with the police having enough to conduct their own official inquiry, knowing that they're not going to have to interview everyone all over again, sort of thing. So I think that is a failure of it. I know what you mean, James. The police are coming, and they will say, "Well, hang on, there's a wallet here or a book here with a bullet in it and all the rest of it."
Yeah.
But it should be Blanc saying, "Now here's what's happened. Now off you go."
But also, Helen won't get away. She is just as much a criminal in this situation as everyone else, because of A, blowing up the house, and B, destroying the Mona Lisa. Like,
is that not fair? Like, she has blown up a house and destroyed the Mona Lisa. Like,
I'm pretty sure if someone blew up a house,
why do we feel she should get away?
I'll tell you, for me, it's fair. It's okay for her to have blown the house up and all the rest of it and got her personal.
Would you say that if you were in that house?
No, I wouldn't say. But I'm saying in terms of an audience member. But I would, as long as it is made clear to me as the audience member that she knows before the film ends that she will suffer the consequences, and she says, "I will take them."
Yeah,
I know what I've done, and I will take them.
That's the opposite. They're not saying that she's going to walk off scot-free. Like, there's going to be an investigation into whatever the.
Well, they're not saying she's not either. It would be better for me if that were made clear. If Blanc said to her, "You've done this now, and it was the only thing we could do. Whether or not it is, Luke, is a separate issue. The only thing we could do, but you will have to take consequences." He's got the guts to tell her, "I can take this no further." He should have the guts then to say to her, "This is your way out, but you will have to deal with it at the end." And that, to me, is a major missing bit of character, motivation, and all the rest of it.
But also, Blanc basically tells her, winks at her, to go and destroy shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a minute, dude. You're meant to wait. Why are you telling her to do that? It's going to get her in more trouble. Like, at that point, she's not in trouble. At that point, she still has the high ground because, well, she's been shot.
Yeah, it's not. Isn't that
once he's decided to make that? Once he's decided to do that for her or to her, whichever way you look at it, he ought to make it clear to her that that's what happened, and we should see him do that. I genuinely think that. Because that then would be a more satisfying conclusion, because she does it anyway. She then has a choice. How much does she want this revenge? Does she want it to the extent that it will cost her liberty?
Yeah.
And she then, or not? And then she has a choice to make, and that would be a nice final little consideration before she blows everything to pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, I took it from almost the framing, the way it's filmed, like the shots of Janelle Monáe in that scene. She is surrounded by fire and she's looking really fierce in the middle of it all, and she's just destroying shit. That is just a woman on fire. But the idea that she's thinking, oh, how am I going to get out of this? She's just having an absolute, like, she's a disruptor in the truest sense. And to me, that was enough. Like, I don't know if I really need, like, I think she doesn't give a fuck about the consequences. Like, what about the consequences? She's absolutely not thinking about that. I think
maybe she's not, but for the purpose of a golden age would make that clear. A golden age, a true golden age story would make that clear. That's my point. And
it's like the murder of Charles Augustus Milverton, right?
Oh yeah.
At the end there, the lady gets her revenge. She murders Milverton, right? Spoiler alert for this 100-year-old short story.
I don't know what this is.
Oh, it's a Sherlock Holmes story. There's a blackmailer who's being a jackass, and eventually one of the people who he's been blackmailing goes and shoots him, and Sherlock Holmes and Watson witness it. And at the end, the Lestrade, I think it's Lestrade, comes to Baker Street and says, you were there, you saw something. Who was it? And Holmes is like, no, even though he does know who it is, right? He's letting the person go because he knows what she's done was justified, right? And so, like, I can get on board with that kind of stuff happening, with the detective letting the person go or not ratting the person out. It's just that I think because Rian Johnson went so insanely big with this movie, I'm like, you're blowing up an island, man.
Yes.
Like, you're blowing up the Mona Lisa. Like, this is too big to where everyone involved is going to face some sort of consequence. And are we not meant to root for this elementary school teacher whose sister she found?
Maybe that's right. Yeah, maybe it's the fact that it's too big as a climax. Because if she just shot him with Duke's gun, then you'd be in Milverton territory. And Holmes does it a lot. Holmes lets a lot of murderers off for good.
He does.
What he perceives are just reasons.
Yeah.
The Abbey Grange is another one. But it's because he thinks that the killers have acted in the way they have because they've been given no choice. Now that's a different setup. So, but she takes that idea of shooting the person who she wants revenge on or whatever it may be, but magnifies it a billionfold.
Yes.
And the cynic in me says that's to give the film a good, explosive, no pun intended, climax.
And to justify the glass onion.
To justify the glass onion. And it's not necessarily
$1 billion glass building. You can't leave the $1 billion glass building standing at the end of it. The whole damn movie's based around.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
True.
Oh yeah, you've got to blow up the glass onion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to decide. Okay, very, very, very quickly. The other plot hole, and there's a few others, but I won't go into them. The other one that I didn't really like was that it seemed quite senseless that he murdered Duke, Dave Bautista's character. It didn't really, everything around that didn't quite make sense, because we've sort of covered a little bit about this, because he's done it to frame someone killing him, but it also is played as if he kills Duke because Duke saw him at Andy's house,
Right.
and because of the thing online where they see that she's actually dead. It's like, well, does he kill Duke because Duke is showing him the news, and it's revealed that Andy is actually dead, so therefore the person who's in this house is definitely not Helen, or Andy rather. So, but why is he killing Duke?
Because Duke's seen it, he nearly runs Duke over on his way back.
But why kill Duke here? Surely it makes sense to kill Duke. I mean, that was ages ago. That was several weeks ago.
Yeah, he should have killed him back then, probably.
Like, why does he wait to bring?
He does say that his ratings. I think he said his ratings were going down on his show, and he wasn't going to put him on his famous news channel anyway. So.
The film sets it up.
Rhino.
Film sets the motive up as he could place him there.
Yeah,
and the film also sets up the time because nobody knows she's dead. So Duke doesn't know that there's anything to worry about. It's only when he learns she's dead he makes the connection. But I
To
agree.
me, the plausibility issue there isn't necessarily to do with why he's doing it. I think it does make sense. I think it's more like psychologically it doesn't make sense. The idea that that would all happen so instantaneously.
Yes.
I remember thinking he's just seen this. He shows Miles. Miles immediately gets what the implication is, hands him a drink. It sort of all happens a bit too quickly. I think
because would he not pay him off?
Yeah, well, yeah.
He would. And Duke would go with it.
and Duke, that's the more important point. Duke would go with it.
Duke in fact makes a comment about we're all stuck on the golden teat, so he's very much up for.
He's very much up for it. So if he gave him
maybe it's because he Ed Norton, who is a prime actor, can't believe the fact that he's sharing screen time with a WWE wrestler who I think anyone who knows anything about film is still struggling to figure out just how he became a sort of A- list.
Right.
Yes.
He looks like a gorilla, and that's good for cinema. He looks great.
Yeah, maybe that's all it is. Yeah.
And also, he was great in Guardians of the Galaxy, I thought. He was really fun.
But I have to say, I do have to say, because every episode I try to mention Smallville in some way, he was also a monster in an episode of Smallville.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in the beginning of Blade Runner 2049, which I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
I'm not saying he was fantastic. He didn't have to really save
he's
him.
Bad. He's obviously playing a certain type.
Horrendous.
Yeah.
I thought all the actors were good. I think he's really well cast in that kind of like.
Oh, the governor lady was awful. I mean, they could have picked someone better than the governor lady. I don't know who she is, but
who's the governor lady? I'm blanking.
Catherine Hahn.
Not famous enough.
Yeah.
Oh, right. No, she was boring. Also, hang on. Why in the world at one point in the film, her husband calls her, she looks at the phone and she ignores the call and she acts all suspicious about it? Nothing ever comes of that.
No, he's phoning her to tell her that the woman's dead, that Janelle Monáe is dead. That's
but also, what
American turns it round.
Yeah, but what American
politician... That's like 5 minutes before they discover it.
I mean, yeah, but the thing is, anyone who's been watching American politics over the last decade, what American politician is like her? Completely nervous and skittish and no self-confidence.
Yeah. I think like Liz Truss. I mean, that's a British politician, but like you'd be surprised at how many politicians behind the scene are super insecure. Like I buy that. Like that they're massively obsessed with how they're presenting themselves, and as a result of presenting themselves in a fairly clumsy way. I mean, it's probably truer of British politicians than American ones, but I could buy it of an American. I think Hillary Clinton was often very awkward. Or why she lost. She was never that comfortable in her own skin. So I get it. She's Hillary Clinton. Is kind of how I felt about it. When she's going on about the emails, I never send an email that I wouldn't.
Hillary Clinton, that world famous crime writer who wrote a crime novel with Louise Penny recently, wrote.
Oh, really?
Oh, did she? Oh, God.
Oh, wow.
Did you know this? Yeah.
No, I don't pay.
Dolly Parton did one with James Patterson. Bill Clinton did one with James Patterson.
I saw that one.
Which really surprised me because I wondered. So James Patterson doesn't write his books anymore, and there's no way that Bill Clinton wrote a word of that book.
No.
So who the hell wrote that book?
I was jokingly talking to a friend the other day about that book with Bill Clinton and James Patterson, and I was like, you know what? Between the two of them, I believe that Bill Clinton might have actually written something. Because what the hell does he have going on in his life?
I think he might have, because I read it. And the president in that book is the exact opposite. Or it's the president that Bill Clinton wished people would remember him as. Oh. He's a chap who's a war hero. He's a chap who's faithful to his dying wife who has cancer. He's a chap who saves his daughter and saves the world on his own. And he's a chap who everyone hates all the evil politicians hate him because he's such a man of integrity.
Did you finish this book?
I think, I was going to say, you reading this book is similar to you watching Avatar.
It is.
Like, it's kind of like...
Man, I read everything, I watch everything.
Oh,
your stamina is much better than mine, I can tell you that, because I'd have pinned that after about 30 pages.
Here's my last question. Why in the world... Or no, sorry, let me rephrase this. When in the world did Miles have time to plan the island blackout?
Did he plan it? I thought it was just a thing that happened.
That's a hell of a coincidence to happen right after a murder.
No, he plans it because Blanc says, doesn't he? I gave you the only thing with any finesse. I gave you the idea for it. He only gives him the idea for it.
He gives him the idea to kill someone. He doesn't give him the idea to black out the island. When does he have time?
It's like putting a gun on the table and turning the lights off.
When does he have time to do that?
He has no time to do it. But that
maybe it was part of the original Miles murder mystery plot.
Miles says that.
Miles says that.
But that's likely, though, isn't it?
But
that contradicts. That contradicts what Blanc says, because Blanc definitely says,
yes,
you only did this because I said it's like putting a gun on the table. Inviting all these people here is putting a gun on the table and turning the lights out.
But is he not talking about the shooting rather than the actual gunshot, rather than the blackout? The two separate things.
He specifically says the lights going out. And he says the only thing that had any class, I gave you the idea for. He's very, very clear about that.
He is.
Right, yeah.
So the answer is he didn't.
Anyway, not Knives Out, Glass Onion, everybody. So, okay, the last thing we'll talk about then is the complicated relationship between cinema and Netflix, right? So this movie came out for 1 week. Everyone begged, for some reason, everyone was begging for this film to be in the cinema because a lot of people liked the first one.
I absolutely wanted to see this in the cinema. Yeah. I was working on a project and I remember thinking, if I get it done by Tuesday, on Wednesday, I'll bunk off and I'll go and see Glass Onion. And that was the day it was withdrawn. So it was really annoying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have to say, I would have gone to the cinema to see it because I enjoyed Knives Out. So yeah, I would have thought. Yeah. I might have walked out wanting to burn the cinema down, or whatever the other two options were. But I would have gone to the cinema to see it simply because I enjoyed Knives Out and didn't see that at the cinema. So I would have then said the next one.
It's a star-studded movie set in a foreign locale. I mean, there's a bunch of people that don't, overthink this stuff. They just happily watch it with loads of jokes in it. It's commercial. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Well, this is true. Go on.
I think, this is the way the world is going, right? So it's not just Netflix. There's so many streaming services out there now competing for dollars, competing for good stories that they can tell and then sell into different markets. Big markets like China are playing almost the role of Pied Piper to a lot of these things. Now, we're all, I guess, of an age where cinema still means something to us. But there's a whole bunch of people who are growing up where, cinema, they might go once a year for a Marvel film. Yes. The thing that I see, and this is what I really dislike about Rian Johnson films, and especially the new Star Wars trilogy, which everyone, said was fantastic. And I thought, well, A, you've just ripped off the previous one, certainly for the first film, and secondly, he
didn't direct the first one. That was J.J. Abrams.
No. Sorry, not Rian Johnson. Sorry, but just in
J.J. Abrams.
To comment on those films. But overall, what I feel has happened a lot over the last decade is that films are being dumbed down, and secondly, they're aiming for a much younger audience. And partly this is driven by, of course, the superhero films, which, make colossal amounts of money, but also things like the Star Wars trilogy, where the original, I felt there was still some grown-up stuff talked about and discussed and some grown-up characters. But this was like sort of a teeny bopper version of Star Wars for me. And it's either CGI, colossal CGI, heavy films, or films with really stupid, brainless plots, like Glass Onion and others of that ilk. And I think, but the benefit of places like Netflix, I think, is that there is still room if people are given money for really good stories, old-fashioned writing, but you have to look for it. You have to find it, and usually it does float to the top because you'll get a consensus of opinion around a really good series that is well worth watching, like Better Call Saul, etc., those kind of things, plot-driven.
Yeah, I mean, Better Call Saul was my favorite thing of last year, let alone movie. And if I think about it, all the TV shows generally I saw last year, I preferred to the movies. So that's definitely where it's going.
Same.
I just, as someone who loves movie, I think that's a shame. I would rather.
Yeah,
I don't think cinema is doing that anymore, which is why I'm sort of pro Netflix and pro streaming channels, because they have the budget to allow those kind of sort of more nuanced plots to be made now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you, James. Actually, I most of the stuff that I loved last year was television. Was things like House of the Dragon. I think in cinema, I haven't seen everything. So like, there's a few films I know that you mentioned, like was it Decision to Leave and the Irish.
That is
movie.
fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't seen those yet, but I want to. But like I really liked Top Gun Maverick. I think that was great, and I loved I like the Nick Cage movie. The title is really strange. It's like Immense Talent, Immeasurable Weight, whatever.
Oh, I know what you mean. I've not seen it.
Oh, The Extraordinary Weight of My Success, or something like that.
Something like that. That's it. It's a really.
I think the fact that no one can remember the title probably explains why it wasn't that successful.
It is a very obnoxious title. It's an obnoxious title, and it's impossible to remember, which doesn't help it out. But it is genuinely a very, it's a charming movie. I would say it's charming. It's not going to blow your mind, but it was charming, and there was some heart to it, and I admired it for that.
I like the Banshees of Inisherin. Did any of you guys see that? I thought that was fascinating to see.
That was good. But then if you saw In Bruges, you knew what you were going to get. And
I thought that was quite different because they were playing such different characters.
It was different, but you're not going to go far wrong with
no. Oh yeah, right. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Together, and then you've got what's his face, McDonough. Is that his name? How do you pronounce? His name
Martin McDonough, I think.
McDonough, because he did the 3 billboards, didn't he? Which was fantastic. So
yeah.
Has anyone seen RRR?
I haven't, but I have heard of it, and
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've not seen it.
I
do like that comment though.
I've heard a lot about it, and because Biffer in the chat has mentioned it as well. He says RRR.
Pain for your eyes, bloody hell! That's a really good
I don't know if it's on
Netflix. They should put that on the poster.
Okay. They should do. I don't know if it's on Netflix here, but it is one that I would like to see because I've heard so many people say that it's just a really good action movie. So I am keen to see that. So I guess one of the big questions is would you go see the Knives Out 3? But I think we sort of answered that. I think most of us here would.
Would you not, Luke? Would you shun it?
I would not go see it in cinema. As long as it's on Netflix and I don't have to go anywhere, I will watch it.
Yes.
Probably, maybe.
Yeah. As long as it's on the streaming service you're already paying for.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to leave the house to go and watch Knives Out 3, but I would watch it to see what they do next, sort of thing, which you might argue is the whole point.
Do you think Netflix will cave and do a longer theatrical run? Because that seems to be the big problem this time. Is everyone wanted much longer than just a couple of days?
It seems like they didn't want that. Like they're actively trying to kill cinemas, or maybe they just wanted to win the streaming wars, like having the most popular content over Christmas, and that means not letting the cinemas have it. Like I sort of get what the business plan is. I don't like the business plan, but I understand it. So I kind of assume that unless in the 2 years before we get another one, things have shifted, like culturally, like in terms of the media landscape, I think probably it'll be the same situation again.
Probably.
I with Martin Scorsese, who's like the world's greatest living director. His last film and his next film are both going straight to telly. I kind of feel like his next film, I think looks really good. I can't remember what it's called. But it's like apparently that's Apple or something, and that's not having any.
Right.
Well, he publicly lamented, and he's one of these people who publicly lamented the fact that cinema is being dumbed down and it's all CGI and it's all sequels, which are, they get progressively worse. I mean, other than the Godfather sequel, the first one, not the third.
And one. Mission Impossible.
Oh man,
they're good. They're good.
They're good.
They are very.
Tom Cruise doing his own stunts. I was watching him the other day. He was. I mean, I have to give him kudos, right? I mean, is he what 58, 60?
He's like,
and he's cycling off a mountaintop with bungee harnesses and all that. So you've got to give him the credit for all of that, no matter how weird he might be in his personal.
Yes.
Like,
This
or not.
year coming, that is one of the few films that I'm definitely going to see at the cinema.
Same.
At this point,
Same.
I feel most
You have-
films, even the Banshees of Inisherin, which I saw in the cinema and I absolutely loved, like 4 weeks later, it was on the Disney Channel. And I just felt like a mug for paying cinema prices. Now, if I, someone who loves cinemas, am already a bit like, I'm not going to go and watch anything because it was really only Top Gun Maverick that was, you know, like, we're going to stay in cinemas for as long as possible. Apart from that, none of these things.
But that was nostalgia. I still can't believe that film grossed $1 billion. I mean, it's just a repeat of the first film, but with a bit
I'll
of.
tell you why. I know why
nostalgia.
I totally know why it was successful, because it was a return to just a good, solid action movie with a hero you can get behind. Like, you can get behind Maverick's story. You don't have some stupid, I'm Luke Skywalker on an island crying myself to sleep at night. I'm Han Solo. I'm dead after the end of a movie. You don't have the nonsense that were that's going on with like Star Trek and stuff like that. Like, it was like, oh, you just have a really good protagonist that is motivated and has complications in his life, i.e. not telling Rooster about the deal he made with his mom, about not, keeping him out of the Top Gun, all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, you just have incredible action, very good, mostly real action.
This is the thing about Mission Impossibles and Top Guns and all of this with Tom Cruise. They're good films, but every time I see one of those, I think wasted potential. Tom Cruise was a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
When he was doing the 4th of July and the color of money and a few others, a few good men.
Yeah.
But somehow the establishment decided that he was never going to win an award, or he's never going to win an Oscar. And I think that pissed him off so much. He said, well, fuck it, I'm not going to do those kind of films anymore. I'm just going to make mega grossing action films. And
I'm just going to make mega grossing action movies. I mean, that's quite a big achievement.
What a settle.
It's like there's lots of good actors out there, but there's not many who can do mega grossing.
Yeah, but when you think of all of the Oscars, the people that they've given all the people they've given Oscars to, and you think, well, one of the biggest stars that has ever lit up the screen, and everybody loves to hate on Tom Cruise. Well, I personally don't. His Scientology is fine. Okay, that's his personal business.
Yeah,
nothing to do with me.
Tom Cruise for me was always best when he was up against someone he really had to work to be noticed.
Paul Newman, for instance. Yeah.
Paul Newman, Jack Nicholson. When he really had to actually stop being a smile and a cool haircut, and he had to do something more.
Absolutely.
That's when he could do something pretty astonishing.
I think it reminds me a little bit. In the first half of his career, he is very often being paired opposite someone who's like a great actor of the previous generation. Yeah. Like, as you were saying, Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, Robert Duvall in Days of
Dustin
Thunder.
Hoffman.
I was thinking, but Gene Hackman is in The Firm. And like, it's kind of like that's why he was ahead of the rest a bit. Like people like Judd Nelson and all the kind of also-rans of his era. It was almost like the previous generation kind of said, this is the kid.
Rob Lowe.
Like, it was kind of like, this is the guy who's the next generation of us. And I kind of feel that he hasn't really done that in the second half of his career. He's like, I don't think anyone's watching Top Gun Maverick and thinking Miles Teller is the next Tom Cruise.
But that's
like
what I mean.
Not setting the elevator down in quite the same way.
I think it's a shame. I think he could have been respected as a truly iconic actor. As opposed to,
he has done
whole generation knows him as there's a whole generation of people who go,
Ball of the 4th of July is incredible.
I thought he was slightly hammy in that, but there's a whole generation who don't know him as a proper character actor. They just think of him as Mr. Mission Impossible and Mr. I do my own stunts.
I mean,
I run around in a vest all the time.
I agree with that.
See, I love Top Gun Maverick, but I mean, it is a predictable movie. Going back to what Luke was saying, like, it's a movie where there's not a single thing that happens in it that I didn't know was going to happen. Like, I don't think when talking about, we all knew that Janelle Monáe wasn't really dead. Like, when Tom Cruise dies 20 minutes towards the end of Top Gun Maverick, I don't think there's a single person in the audience that really realistically thought he was dead.
I kind of did.
I mean,
I was so wrapped up. I sort of thought he was dead for like.
I
half
thought
a
the
minute.
movie couldn't survive without him because Miles Teller couldn't carry it. Is what I thought. It's like he's got to be alive.
I think I didn't realize how much time was left in the movie at that point. So I thought, oh, he's dead. They're going to get away, and there's going to be a funeral. That's going to be the end. But I didn't realize if I could see the time bar, and be like, oh, there's 30 minutes left of the movie. Okay, yeah, I probably would have been like, yeah, he's alive. He's alive.
No, I didn't buy it at all. The thing is, I didn't really buy Janelle Monáe either, but I didn't buy the Tom Cruise one. But then it's a different genre. It's not asking, I think one of the reasons, this back to what you're saying, Luke, is like why people liked it and why it was popular, is that it was quite comfortable. Like it wasn't it wasn't scaring the horses. It was a bit like they're telling you what the ending's going to be all the way through it because they're telling you what the mission is. And you kind of know they're going to do the mission. Yeah. So it's kind of like you kind of know what's going to happen, and that there's a certain comfort to that.
Yeah.
Well, they're called popcorn films for a reason, aren't they? They're called popcorn films because you can put a big thing of popcorn on your lap and just sit like that and not really think about anything. Whereas
Pick and
mix. But then that goes to your point, Vaseem, about how that's not like very challenging. Like it's not like it's no one sees Tom Cruise as a good actor anymore. They just see him as a movie star.
Liam Neeson is another great example because Liam Neeson makes Taken, and then as far as
he's a joke though now.
As far as I can see, for the last 20 years, he's just made Taken, but with different titles.
It's hard to remember that he was in Schindler's List,
and he did Schindler's List.
Everybody forgets he was in Schindler's List. Yeah,
and he was nominated for an Oscar, I think.
Yeah, he was. Fair enough as well. He's great.
Yeah, Michael Collins and films like that. Now he's just the Taken bloke.
Yeah. But also every film he's done since Taken has been bad. Whereas at least Tom Cruise still has that star power to.
Although Liam
Neeson did a really good one. No, he did. No, to be fair, he did a really good one with Ed Harris. He was an assassin for Ed Harris, who's an Irish gangster. And then he has to pit himself against Ed Harris because Ed Harris wants to kill his son or something like that.
Right.
I thought it was it's a decent crime film.
He played Matt Scudder.
Who's Matt?
He did. Yes, I've not seen that film. I've not heard good reviews of it. So
the thing about Tom Cruise is, even though he's done 10 years now of Mission Impossibles and Top Guns and whatever, and he's established himself as really the last true movie star in the truest sense, is that his box office is so great that when he can't do that anymore because he's too old, he's got another 10 years of doing the actor stuff. He'll be doing what you're describing again when he can't really do Mission Impossible anymore.
I think it bothers him.
If Harrison Ford can Indiana Jones at 82 years old, God knows what Tom Cruise will be doing.
I think it really, really bothers him that the Academy shut him out and decided, he was never going to get an Oscar. And I think it really pisses him off that happened. And that's why he doesn't want to go and do those films, because he knows he won't get the due credit. Even if he puts in a brilliant performance, they won't nominate him. That's what I think. Or they won't give it to him, even if they do.
So you might as well.
Walk Among the Tombstones. That's right, Biffa. Walk Among the Tombstones. Good film.
That's it. It's a great book, by the way. Go read
this comment about Will Smith here. The biggest.
I like that.
Oscar, but Will Smith finally got his Oscar last year, and look what happened. Well,
Tom Cruise would not do that because he's the consummate professional.
This worries me. Biffer also says Liam Neeson in Marlowe will redeem himself. Now, I am not excited to see Liam Neeson play that shitty pastiche.
I've not read that. Is it not good?
It's not by Chandler. It's by some other guy.
Oh shit! I thought this was a joke. I didn't realize Liam Neeson was playing.
No, it's written by the bloke. It's written by John Banville, who
won a Booker Prize for the Sea.
Won a Booker Prize, but he writes under a pseudonym, or he used to.
Yeah, he does.
Benjamin Black. Yeah. And he wrote a series of books which are actually very good, with a pathologist character in 1950s Dublin called Quirk. Yeah. And because his character is set in 1950s and they're a bit noirish, Chandler Estate said, well, you're a perfect person to do a Marlowe pastiche, despite the fact you're from Ireland and not anywhere near Los Angeles.
Quite literally.
Despite the fact that your character doesn't talk or act or react or have anything in common with Philip Marlowe, but he's vaguely 1950s. He's 1950s. He's vaguely noirish. So you write this book, and where he did, and read it once, and never read it again. But
it's not. I was so disappointed by that book.
Marlowe is incompetent. My memory.
Are we
Marlowe is
saying that
incompetent
Liam
all the way
Neeson is
through.
actually sorry? Are
Yes.
I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Are we saying Liam Neeson is actually going to be playing
Yes.
a Bogart-ish role?
He's playing Philip Marlowe.
He's playing
He
Philip
is
Marlowe.
He's actually
Yeah.
playing Marlowe.
He's actually
playing
playing
Marlowe.
Philip Marlowe.
Bogartish of Bogartish roles.
The film is apparently going to release on the 3rd of February 2023 in the States.
Why have I not heard of this?
I mean, I think there's probably a reason.
Yeah.
Nobody wants it.
I think we all know why no one has heard about this movie because, let's be fair,
It is possible
Probably.
that it's possible there will be an episode of the Luke Deckard show dedicated to
Right, yeah.
Blonde.
my anger of this. But it's funny to me. Like Marlowe is an interesting character that I think is never. The pastiches don't serve him well, and by pastiche I mean the Benjamin Black books and even the most recent Joe Ide attempt to modernize Marlowe and completely write Marlowe in a voice and time period that is foreign to what Chandler did. It was atrocious to me. I'm like, what do you think?
We discussed this, Luke, didn't we?
A little bit.
Updating Marlowe does not work.
No.
There's a notorious film of The Big Sleep with Robert Mitchum, who is normally very good with Marlowe, but it's directed by Michael Winner, which is perhaps all you need to know. And
Oh my God.
it's not only set in the 1970s, but it's set in London.
Yeah.
And we discussed, haven't we, Luke, before on a previous show that if you take Marlowe out of 1940s Los Angeles, you're really playing with fire, and you're going to lose a great deal of it. You know, so nothing very exciting about Liam Neeson as Marlowe, I don't think.
No. Well, guys, I think we've successfully completed our review of Glass Onion,
which we stopped talking about 20 minutes ago. That's really funny.
This is bonus content for those who stick it out to the end.
Yeah.
Right?
For the real fans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in summary, it's a film that you take away from what you want to take away from it. Are we going to say that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think, James, you were saying that everyone you were speaking to was either like, it was almost like a 50-50 split.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if we're quite 50-50, but it does sort of feel like me and Vaseem are more on the nah, and you and Matt are more sort of
Although I'm the only one that likes Glass Onion more than Knives Out, I think.
Yeah.
I think I'm on my own on that. I much prefer it. I don't mind Knives Out. But
my summary would be similar to Matt's, maybe slightly differently worded. I mean, it's a bit shit, but if you don't mind how shit it is,
if you like shit, it's the movie for you.
I asked a couple of friends of mine to watch it. Just they're not writers, they're not into crime generally or whatever, and they said, "Yeah, I thought that was really good. I really enjoyed it." And I asked them the next day,
"There you go."
What and they said, "Oh, I can't really remember much about it."
There you go. That's the
thing.
That's when you know that when $100 million have been spent and you literally can't remember anything about the film or not very much about the film, it's not money that's been wisely spent.
Yeah.
Well,
it's 12 hours.
For me, it's the movie of the year. It's the absolute movie of the year. We're 5 days in and I've only seen one movie, so that may be subject to change.
There you go.
But it is currently my movie of the year, and also my least favorite movie of the year. So yeah,
love it. Cool. Well, I will be back next week. I don't know what I'm talking about next week. I don't know. I'll think of something, but I'll be back next week talking about something. I also have in a couple of weeks. I have Jonathan Whitelaw. He's going to come on the podcast, and we're going to discuss his top 6 films and books. That's going to be quite fun. And I got a bunch of other stuff coming up in the future. That'll be fun to listen to as well. But until next week, I will catch you guys later. So enjoy your evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe, please. That's always helpful. And see you next week.